Living and breathing La Vida Boa. Welcome to the Boa Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Demora, alongside host Nick Colhay. We're here to inspire. We're here to learn and educate. We're here to have a good time and have conversations that shape our lives, make us feel good, and maybe even look good.
What's up, everybody? I'm your co-host, Nick Colhay. This is the Boa Life Podcast, episode number 27. You ready to do this, Steve?
Let's go.
So, tonight's guest, we are very happy to have her here. She is a mom. She is a wife. She is a doctor. What else can we say? Welcome to the podcast, Brittny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to chat with you.
So, quick backstory. Your husband and I worked together, and then I got to kick his butt a little bit because, as a lot of people know from the audience, that I am still a trainer. I still consider myself a trainer.
Yes.
But I had reached out to him. His name is Damani, and I asked him if he was interested in coming on. And just so everyone knows, he said, no, you should take my wife first. She has a lot to offer. I'm sure the audience will love her.
Well, he's a good man. He's my best friend, and he's an amazing supporter. And he likes to be by my side or sometimes even right behind me. So I'm glad that he offered me up.
Well, it's great to hear you have such support.
Yes, that's
we
awesome.
like to have great conversations. Just so everyone knows, we actually just met, so this is going to be super organic. It's going to be fun to hear your story and let the audience in on your life.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a CEO and have a husband that cheerleads for her. And I often regret the conversations we have before we start because they're always so good.
Yes.
I'm like, I wish we could let the audience into some of the conversations we have, and maybe we can with some ingenious editing from our buddy Justin out there. But I mean, I feel like we've had a great introduction and a great conversation already. So this is just, let's further that and let's go even further. And
Perfect.
And hopefully you can help us help other people. And I think you will be able to do that for sure.
I hope so. Absolutely.
So I guess the first question is, what exactly are you involved in? And I know it's to help people. So what exactly is that?
Yes. So yes, as Nick said, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 3. I'm also a wife. I'm a board certified vascular surgeon. And these days I refer to myself as a holistic vascular surgeon because I'm a CEO of a practice that my husband and I co-founded that's called Modern Vascular. And the whole purpose of our practice is to really partner with our patients so that they can advance their health at every single age. And we're really wanting to flip the idea of aging on its head and really redefine the way healthcare looks for our community.
So this, when you say CEO, you and your husband founded, is this a franchise of some sort, or is this like just your baby?
It's just us. It's our baby. Yes, baby number 4.
So who had the idea to kind of like branch out on your own and step out and do it as a couple?
I think it's really been our brainchild together. My husband is an orthopedic surgeon, and so we went to medical school together. We trained together. We started practicing together in big employed positions here in Connecticut, and it was probably by now about 5 years ago that I started feeling a little bit of an itch, not being so happy in what I now kind of refer to as the machine of medicine, just feeling much like a hamster on a wheel. And so we started talking about that as friends do, and really decided at that point that we should do something on our own. So we started looking at what that could be, something that we would really feel like we could make our own, really have a lot of fun with, but also really do some good work in. And so, yeah, that was probably about 5 years ago. And it's taken a while to actually bring it to fruition, but here we are.
Yeah. It's nice how sometimes we transition in life to do things for a number of reasons, whether it's to open up follow our dreams or to open up our calendars, to be able to have more flexibility. As a mother of 3
Yes.
and a CEO and wearing all these hats, I mean, it must be tough for you to juggle all these things. How are you doing that?
Some days look better than others. I try not to overuse the B word, the busy word. I really like to say that life is full. My boys are really competitive in basketball. They travel all over the place. This past weekend, my now 12-year-old was in Pennsylvania. This weekend, my 10-year-old's going to be in Maryland. And then my 4-year-old is trying to make her way in the world. My husband is still practicing. We're building this business. There's lots to do. I think we give each other grace. We certainly put our family first. And we try to build elements of support in our world. So we've got support at home, we've got support with the kids, we've got little things that really help us along, like the way we get groceries into our home, the way we keep our home cleaned, and then we've got support in our practice too, such that we're not the only people that are responsible for the patients. So I think support is really the name of the game.
For someone that has no idea what a vascular surgeon does, break it down a little bit. Like,
Okay.
what's your typical day like? You guys, you started, you said 5 years ago, you kind of left big medicine and ventured out on your own. So how was it taking those baby steps into doing it and leading up to 5 years later where we are today?
Sure. So I'll start by saying the way I'm practicing now is not the way a conventional vascular surgeon practices. So a vascular surgeon is one who operates on the circulation. So on the veins that bring the blood to the heart, on the arteries that bring the blood away from the heart. And we really operate everywhere except for within the skull and the heart. So everything that's connecting all of that is all game for a vascular surgeon. So that used to be something as massive as an aortic aneurysm and really serious emergency surgery, or it could be something that was a little bit lighter, like varicose veins. So these days, I don't do any major surgery. I haven't been in an operating room for over 2 years. I do still do procedures, so I do varicose vein work, but we also do body sculpting and functional strength training, and I still do some pain treatments for neuropathy. So it's really varied, and we just get to take our time with our patients and really approach everything much more holistically than you can in a big box practice.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You're helping people. You're helping people feel better about themselves, looking good. How important is that's part of your practice now? That it's more, relationships and doing that for the individual than doing it as a part of your job.
It's so important. It's the biggest reason I think that I left practice in the way that it used to look to me. When I got my first job, I really only had one job coming out of training, and I was there for 5 years. And when I started, it was exactly what I wanted. And it took me a little while to grow up because you're so naive when you come out of training. You have no idea what practicing medicine is actually going to feel like. And for me, again, I just can't help but say it again, felt like being a hamster on a wheel. And I just remember saying to my father, who had a hard time grappling with the concept that a surgeon felt like she wasn't in control of her life. But I just remembered saying to him, this is not what I did all of this for. Like, this is not why I went to school for decades and sacrificed so much time and energy to just feel like I'm not in control of my destiny and not even in control of the way I want to treat patients. So it's so important that now I get to chat with them, that I know what's going on with their children, what's going on with their grandchildren, that their cat was sick, that I really know what's happening with them is so important.
So you're able to,
No, please.
You're able to allow them to start to trust you by spending a little more time with them, like you mentioned, getting to know them as a person instead of them just going into an office and, looking at a body part 10 minutes later, you're like, remember I feel like a lot of doctors don't even remember a lot of patients' names in some sense.
Sure.
One thing you mentioned that caught my ear was anti-aging.
Yes.
And one of the main things that's been on my mind the past couple of years is that sort of thing and longevity. So I commend you for entering the field of trying to help people do that, because I feel like it's so important. We're all trying to live longer and do more things.
Yeah.
So what kind of things in that sense are you doing to help patients?
So I think it's, again, really opening them up to talk about lifestyle in general. One of the things that I used to say and practice the way it used to look and still say now is that as a surgeon, we have procedures, we have surgery, but then we've got lifestyle modifications. And it's always so important to start there, start with a lifestyle. And that really gets pushed down in a lot of medicine as a whole, but it's the most important tools that we have. So it's the little things. It's hydration, that the majority of Americans are dehydrated. It's really what a balanced diet is and how to achieve that in a really simple way that may not be trendy, but it's something that's going to last a long time. It's about sleep. It's about stress management. It's about all of these things that don't get enough play in a typical practice. And so I think it's really starting there. And then we can get a little bit more creative and bring in technology, but it's really those basic building blocks that are so important for patients to have as a foundation.
Is there, you mentioned a lot of areas, and it's almost like a one-stop shop. Like I can come see you, do a little vascular work. Your husband can train me a little bit, push me, and you can tell me what to have for dinner. Is there any specific area where, like you favor, where you really love that particular part, or just as a whole, seeing everyone kind of doing the right things to get healthier?
As a whole, I love all of it, truly. And I think it's because there's so much integrity in it for me. It's the way I live my life. It's the way my husband does. It's the way we're raising our children. I think out of the things I just mentioned, probably my baby, and again, my children know this, my husband know this, is to talk about hydration, because it's, I think, does not get enough attention out there, that there are so many little snippets of information that are really misinformation. And it's such a keyword these days, but that there's an actual way, a physiologic way for someone to determine how much water they should drink, and that most people aren't drinking enough. And it's not 8 glasses and it's not half your body weight in ounces, and that you can really feel so much better by just simply drinking water. But procedurally, what I'm enjoying the most is the functional strength training. It's a lot of fun.
So you get patients to come in, literally like a personal training session.
It is. So again, it's with technology. So as my husband is a former trainer, and I am not. So what we get to do is utilize an amazing device, which actually creates contractions in different muscle groups for patients. There's also some radio frequency. It's really a dual therapy, but it allows patients to do more functional work than the human body is typically capable of doing. It also allows them to get rid of the lactic acid afterwards, so that they're not burning like crazy as if they would if they really worked that hard on their own. And it's amazing to see what happens in pretty short order.
We might have to edit a quick clip of Damani, doing a demo of this. Just in insert now.
We could do that.
We should an actual physical trip to the facility. Yeah. It's amazing. It amazes me how ill-informed and sometimes uninformed, ill-informed that people can be when it comes to their health. And hydration seems to be something that you would think would be commonplace, that people would know, keep hydrated, how to do it.
Yeah.
But this is again why this podcast and these conversations are so important. It's like stating the obvious. Yes. Repeat. What is it? Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Like, hey, people, like your health is important. If you want longevity, water is important. I don't know if it's fads, but there's a lot about hydrating. You'll see a lot of celebrities now with, a gallon of water and trying to drink. Yeah. They have half day, 3/4 of the day, where you should be all day long. When you're meeting with people, and whether you're doing the strength training or whatever you're doing in your practice, are there ways of measuring for an individual what the right amount is for them? Because okay, and how is that? Because am I a camel? Can I go with like no water for a couple days, or am I someone that needs to have like a gallon of water every day? I feel like I'm a sweater.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was always embarrassed. You know, I went to Catholic school and I had the terrible material shirts. It was probably 100% cotton, and you'd get the sweat stains, and I was always self-conscious of it. So I had an inkling as a kid and as an athlete that I probably needed more hydration than most people did. So I was always pretty good about that, and I tried to get educated on it. What are the ways you can tell what people need, and is there any way of them knowing themselves without,
Yeah. So there is amazing technology out there that will really allow you to truly measure. A lot of that does have to do with measuring how much someone sweats, actually really getting down to the gram with how much they weigh and measuring the difference. When we talk about how much someone needs at a minimum, we call that a maintenance amount of fluid. And so you can determine that really just based on their body weight. That's leaving a lot out though, right? That's leaving out their climate. That's leaving out their activity level. It's leaving out what they ate or didn't eat. So there's a lot more to consider and talk about to really get really much more granular. A great scale, if you stand on it with bare feet, will actually estimate your percentage of body water. And all of us are at least 2/3 water. So when you measure it, you should be at least 2/3 water. And if you're not, you're dehydrated, and 85% of us are. But the basic is just, again, starting with your weight and then probably going up from there. So just to give you a generalization, the average American woman needs about 3 liters, and the average American man needs about 4.
Wow. And if you're like a typical musclehead, you'll see in the gym with a gallon of water. What does that transfer to?
Yes, so a gallon is about 3 liters. A gallon is about 3 liters. So for that man, he probably needs to drink a little bit more water than that.
A day?
A day.
Wow.
Now,
I'm sorry.
Is there any truth to when you expel the fluid from your body? That's a medical term, might be? I have no idea. But if it's, as long as it's clear, like you're hydrated, like those kinds of things you look for?
You actually don't want it to be clear.
Oh,
you don't want it to be
Son of a gun.
Because you can overdo it. So you don't want it to be clear. You do want it to be transparent. You want it to be see-through. You do want it to be odorless. You don't want it to have any sediment. Nothing should be in it, probably stating the obvious. But you want it to be kind of straw colored. It should have a yellow tint to it, but be transparent.
Watered down Gatorade?
Yeah. Like the citrus C one.
I love that Steve asked this, because right when you said hydration, I'm like, bang. That's something we can focus on really quick as something that is so, common sense.
Yes.
It's too common sense that people don't even realize it. And listen, my wife is hopefully listening to this. You got to fill up your water bottle. I tell you all the time. I tell tons of people because I carry a water bottle with me everywhere I go. And it's the one thing that will kill you the quickest if you don't have it, right? Maybe if you're out in a desert somewhere, the sun might kill you quicker than being dehydrated. But it's the number one thing you should be doing no matter what on your path to a healthy lifestyle.
Like Steve, you jokingly asked, could I go a few days? No. You could not. You could go 2 weeks probably without eating, but you could not go a few days without water.
Yeah. So I mean that in itself tells you how important it is, does, right?
Yeah.
And it must be hard to deal with individuals too, just all those variables. But then on top of it, diet. I mean, I know alcohol dehydrates, caffeine, and coffee, all these things that we're accustomed on a large scale to consume are things that are probably working against us in terms of hydration.
Yeah.
When you give the amount of water that a typical male and female need for every day, can we take into account food and all that, like fruits, or is that just fluid?
Not really.
Wow.
Because the amount that we talked about really is it's a minimum. Again, it's that maintenance amount just to keep your basic metabolic functions going.
Yeah.
And then there's more. So if you were to have a hard workout, or you were to go to the sauna, or you were to have a salty meal, then that varies. There are foods that have a higher water content, like cucumber is a great example. Even watermelon is a good example. But you'd have to consume a lot of it for it to really make an appreciable difference. But that's why one of the really trendy wellness procedures right now is to get an IV, because it's so much more efficient than carrying around the gallon or so.
You guys offer IV treatments, right?
We do.
Is that like a daily thing? Someone will come in every day and get it, or
No one comes daily. Some people do come weekly. A minimum we recommend is to come in monthly, but probably, depending on what is administered, probably you're only going to feel the effects for a couple of weeks or so.
And it makes so much sense. I mean, I could see someone maybe being apprehensive to do something like that, because I'm not a big fan of needles. And,
Sure.
But so often, my daughter once had to go to the hospital, because of the stomach bug. What do? They put you on fluids.
Yes.
It's like, this is life saving, and we're usually only doing it when we're in dire straits.
Yes.
But to do it as part of a system to be healthier, I think for a lot of people it probably would work, because from the amounts of fluid that you're telling me, there's no way. I mean, my wife, there's no way she's drinking enough water, and I'm definitely not drinking enough water.
Sure.
My kids are definitely, I don't know what it is for younger humans.
Right, right.
But I'm amazed at the amount that,
It's a lot of water.
Yeah.
It is. And for someone who's maybe having a glass or two, and sort of as you alluded to, they're having a few cups of coffee, again, they're dehydrated. And just to conceptualize that amount of water is hard. I've had people tell me there's no way. There's no way I'm drinking that much water. And it's something that you can approach in a sort of a stepwise fashion. We don't have to go from 0 to 100, but we can work on it.
I know some people probably do that. They know it's like they torture themselves. They know vegetables are good for them, and they'll just close their eyes, plug their nose, and choke them down real quick.
Yes.
But hate it,
Yeah.
And I fully believe that you have to almost make something a habit and at least not hate it in order to do it daily.
Agreed.
Like drinking water. Is there any bottled water? I'm sure there's lots of waters that are better than others.
Yes.
But for the typical person just looking to hydrate more, is there any truth to, should they be going to Costco and buying these huge packs of water and worrying about it being alkaline or completely filtered 10 times? Like, where do you stand with that?
I think the average bottled water at this point is pretty safe. It gets a little bit trickier when we're talking about public drinking water sources. I don't get so excited about alkaline. It's a little bit of hype. It's interesting too, some of the incredibly alkaline ones, like 9+, you can taste it. And I personally don't think it tastes good. So if you're someone who doesn't like water, which a lot of people will say, I don't like water, then drinking a really basic water, really alkaline water will make them less likely to drink it. In the office, we give a water called Hint, which is just a spring water. It's a company that's owned by a woman, and it's a fruit infusion. So it's infused with pineapple, it's infused with cherry, it's infused with strawberry, but it's pure water. There's no sugar, it's not carbonated. So it just gives it a little something extra for someone to be interested in to drink the water. And usually I find that's what helps.
Yeah, the flavor goes a long way in getting it down.
Yeah.
So I think water is foundational for longevity and for a good, healthy life.
It is.
And now with, here we're hopefully coming to an end of the pandemic, but who knows, right? What can we do aside from water to make sure we're at our healthiest so that we can live long lives or do our best to make sure we live long lives and to stay healthy and potentially combat things like COVID or any other diseases that we may come across? I mean, what are some of the things that you're promoting and telling people to do that, to get that longevity and to stay healthy and be healthy?
So there's obviously nutrition, but maybe I'll leave that to the side and we can circle back if you want, because if that just opens up a whole other can of worms. I think a really good one to talk about is just moving your body. I think especially with the pandemic, especially with the school closures, with the quarantining, there's been less movement, our staying closer to home and being really insular. has made it so that we're just moving less as a nation. And, if you haven't heard it, sitting is the new smoking, right? So we really just need to get up and move our bodies. And gosh, it was maybe 10 plus years ago, that idea of 10,000 steps. It honestly doesn't really have that much scientific backing to it, that idea of 10,000 steps, but it's about 5 miles. So if you ask someone to walk 5 miles a day, excellent. And I think it's really important for people to know that that can be broken up across the day. It doesn't have to be this one major outing, but it's just getting up and making that a part of a routine. You can take a phone call while you're walking. You can be walking while you're waiting for your kids at their swim lesson. You don't have to just sit, but to just know that that movement is really important and that it keeps a baseline level of muscle, which is so important for longevity.
Yeah, muscle mass, big thing. I've listened to it 1,000 times, the numbers, the data and the science behind it, and I always forget the numbers because that's not what's important to me.
Okay.
I'm just worried about moving. But yeah, how important someone hits their 30s, or isn't there a specific age where a female and then separate a male, different age, start to decline, and then for the rest of their life, it's like so. What is that area? I'm sure. I think I'm past it right now.
Depress us, Nick.
Sorry. We're really trying to help
We're
people.
trying to beat that. We're helping with
Well, good thing is that we're all in good company because we're all past it. So it's okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So for a woman, it's about 30. So, when we talk about aging, and it's a little bit of a stereotype. It's a little bit of a cliche, right? But sometimes that 30th birthday is a hard one for women to approach. But really after 30, so many things change. Our collagen plummets, our bone density starts to go down, our hormones plummet, our hormone levels plummet, and that really does change everything, including our muscle mass. For men, it tends to be about 35.
Dang.
Yeah, still past.
Yeah, so
So close.
that's humbling.
But it's okay because we just learn how to support our bodies differently, and we're wiser now, right?
You're right. I always,
were.
my outlook is I can't change anything that's out of my control.
That's right.
So I just have to work at trying to beat it.
That's right.
And that's why I love to move every day.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's important. I have some, some looking for a roadmap or looking for, someone that will motivate you and longevity. I have my father who we're going to be visiting very soon to celebrate with him in Florida for his 80th birthday.
Amazing.
Yes. And my grandmother who's 93 years old, and the common denominator with them for sure is walking. I mean, they walk and they walk every day, and they definitely taken their 10,000 steps. I think what amazes me is the the volume of water, the amount of steps is like, taking care of yourself, being healthy is not easy. It's hard.
Yeah.
Eating healthy. I mean, these are all difficult things. I mean, if it was, easy, everybody'd be doing it, right?
It's true.
So these are important things to know, and then we got to keep motivated, and we have to use the tools at hand. And meeting with someone like you is important because you're giving us a lot of information, and now you're a person that's actually putting these things into fruition. You're helping people with longevity and living their best lives.
Yes, we're trying.
It's got to be so fulfilling that you could. I'm so amazed that you had the courage to follow what you wanted, right? You knew you needed to make a transition, and even your dad seemed like maybe he was hesitant at first.
Oh, sure.
Right? Because he's like, what do you mean you're gonna?
Yeah.
But you did it. Here you are. You're pursuing what you wanted to do. It must be so fulfilling for you, and then to have that mindset, it must be contagious for I imagine everyone around you and the people that you're taking care of. So I definitely want to try to figure out how Nick and I can go over there and
You should for sure come.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a public invitation. Come and experience some of what we do.
We might have to have Justin follow us and make it an episode because the audience is definitely going to want to see that.
like an IV or like watch me. I don't want to go on that scale right now.
Yeah, coming back to that scale, is this a typical scale you can get at Amazon, or is
You
it
can get it on Amazon.
Because I
You can
remember
get one on
buying one
Amazon.
recently. It's got the little sensors,
You
the
got
4
it.
sensors. Okay,
Yes.
so remind us real quick, just so everyone can kind of go on Amazon right now. You're welcome, Bezos.
That's right.
So it measures the water
Yes. It'll measure your percentage body water.
Okay, yes. And I have one. I can attest to that. There's all these settings. And, well, actually, it's easier these days. There's just an app for it.
True, of
so
course.
you stand on the thing, and then you find out everything. That's insane. Like,
it's
to think about.
pretty wild.
Think back to when you were probably starting med school, and then now you have a scale you can stand on and get all these calculations of your body.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
It's wild. Absolutely.
So we heard a lot about your practice. We heard a lot about your recommendations to people on how to live the life. Steve and I talk a lot about, well, pretty much all our guests that we've had on have had children. We talk about social media. We talk about what it's like being a child these days. 3 kids run around playing what it sounds like professional basketball already. And I've seen some videos that your son and whoever I saw on there was amazing.
Oh, well, thank
by
you.
the way. So they're killing it, just so you know. How do you manage that life right now as a mom and a CEO? And do you feel bad that your kids are growing up in such a crazy time compared to what you were used to as a child?
I think that our children are growing up in an amazing time. It's funny that you asked that, because I have had a number of patients say to me, particularly in the boomer generation, I'm so glad that I'm not raising my kids right now. And I think there's so much for our children to take advantage of right now. And, we sort of alluded to it, technology is definitely a part of it, and it's definitely a double-edged sword, but I'm excited for what our children are going to get to contribute to the world. They are the next generation. They're going to create those things that we couldn't imagine would have existed 2 decades ago. They're going to be those inventors. And so I'm excited for them to bring forth those things into the world. But it's I'm sure always challenging raising children. And so it is especially challenging now. I think, especially my oldest is 12, and just to see that loss of innocence start to creep in more and more, it's a little bit bittersweet. But again, I just know that's bringing him one step closer all the time to being that adult who's going to really be a change maker. And so I'm excited for them.
You're obviously a successful person, and I think you're going to have continued success for sure. I'm always interested in what are kind of the pillars that got you to where you are. Are there certain routines that you've developed that you've used to do what you've done? And we've always discussed what our routines are, and some of the people we have on discuss theirs. I wake up early. I try to win the day right away with fitness and meditation and doing all these things. And I fall short sometimes. I get out of a good habit and I try to come back to it. Are there any tips that you could share that have led to your success? Because by all measures, you're a huge success.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I would say probably for me, it's a lot of mindset work. And these are things that we talk about with our children too, to really, really keep a growth mindset, to really feel like there's a world of abundance, that all of these things that you want are really at your fingertips and that you can access them, to really know that you're not stuck where you are, that, life is dynamic, that you're always growing is one thing that I always tell my children. You are always growing, right? In this very moment, you are growing. And I think it's important for adults to know that about themselves too, that we can always change, we can always evolve, we can always grow, that there's always something to learn, that if you don't like where you are, that you get to be in a different place. And so I think for me, it's really that mindset work is probably the most important reason why I can approach something new and take it on and have faith that it's going to work out for my good eventually.
Mindset is such a powerful thing. I've read a couple books on it. Well, actually one book, very famous book, is called Mindset. And it's kind of changed my perspective. And it's all about, just controlling the person inside your head, not letting them have control, and really just working on yourself it's a daily routine.
Absolutely.
It's not just physical. I actually think, and I think Steve agrees with me a little with the meditation he does, that the mental work is more important.
Absolutely.
Because to me, moving your body is an easy thing. I joke a lot about running and working out, and it's easy.
Sure.
Because it's a physical task. You can do it. Your body was meant to do it. But controlling what's in your mind and trying to do the right thing with most things you do 80% of the time, that's the toughest thing. Where do you see your kids struggle with, let's say, their mindset? If you're teaching them mindset techniques, what are kids in that age range struggling with right now?
Yeah. So that book that you alluded to is a big one for us. So Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's exactly that. It's staying in that growth mindset, knowing that a mistake does not define you, that you can make a mistake and that you're strong enough to make a mistake and learn from that, and that it gets better from there, that it's not going to slide downhill, that you can continue to climb up the mountain. And it's really interesting, especially when it comes to our boys. They're 21 months apart, and one of them is more naturally has a growth mindset, and one of them more naturally does not. And it's just recognizing that, for him to recognize that about himself and to identify when it creeps up, and then to counteract it. And just that self-awareness, I think, is so key. And right now they're in middle school, and we remember what being in middle school is like. There's just so much happening in their bodies. And again, I think that just that self-awareness starting at this age is just so important, because there's so much happening in their minds, in their bodies, that they can start now and really learn how to monitor it, how to use their mind as they're growing.
You alluded to like support, setting up supports, and it really resonated with me. And obviously your kids are going to be successes in their own right because of the support that I think they're going to have from you and your husband. I think that that's something that we can do as parents, is instill this self-belief, and then support them, pick them up,
Sure.
push them, and show them that like we believe in them as well. When I was growing up, my parents always told me that, you can do anything you want. And I believe them,
Sure.
And it was, my father came from a poor village in Portugal and came here and built an unbelievable life for himself. So he lived it. He knows, be courageous, take chances, and, hope for the best, and work hard, and you can achieve anything. And he instilled that in me. And that belief is what I'm trying to give to my kids too, because I think that there's nothing more important than positivity and believing that you can achieve anything. And hurdles, mistakes, failures, that's just a chance to learn.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
But when you said support system, it's like, that's what I want to try to be in this podcast, in my community, with my children. I think we need to be more welcoming to help. I think sometimes as individuals, we kind of want to have that mindset where we want to do it ourselves. Sure. And sometimes we have to be more welcoming to getting any help we can. And I think when you set it up in a mindset like you did, when you said that, it resonated with me. It's like supports, like a foundation. You have on it, like get supports any way you can, whether it's parent, mentors, any which way. And when I'm hearing you say that, that's kind of what's coming through to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And were there mentors or supports outside of your parents, your husband, that really changed your life and helped you become who you are?
My parents were number one for sure, and they still are. It's funny, thinking about what you're saying about how you're parenting. There are things that my parents said to me when I was a kid that were so pivotal. And it's funny now, I'll reflect them back to them, and they don't even remember saying it.
It was so
I said that? I don't remember. Okay. But I remember it so clearly. And there was one time in particular, and I've told my dad this story a number of times, but something so simple. We were driving to the grocery store, and he was trying to park the car. And he was taking a long time. He's going around the parking lot and around the parking lot. And I kept saying, well, Dad, can you park there? Can you just park there? And he said, no, I don't want those parking spots. And I'm getting impatient. I think I was in middle school. And he said to me, Brittny, never settle. I don't want those parking spots. Never settle. And I never forgot that. And of course, 15 minutes later, he found the parking spot that he wanted. But I think it's just an example that, you can have such an impact on someone and not even realize it. It can be the tiniest thing. But really, it would by far and away be my parents. They grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in Connecticut. The vast majority of our extended family is in North Carolina and beyond. And so it was just our little family of 4. Not that we didn't have a community around us, but it was definitely all about our nuclear family when I was growing up. So.
You mentioned family being from North Carolina. Were you born here? Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Connecticut. I was technically born in New Jersey, but I was only there for about 10 months. And I grew up in Connecticut on the shoreline, small little town called Waterford. My parents still have a home there, but they're now retired. Especially these days, now it's safer. They hop in their RV and they're right now in Arizona enjoying the 70-degree weather. But then I went away a little bit for school and then came back.
And you mentioned earlier meeting Damani.
Yes.
You met in med school?
We met in medical school. I guess just before medical school, we met visiting medical school.
And then a lot of your schooling and even work after was done together?
It was, yes. So we went to school. We went to medical school together. We studied together. We both became surgeons, so we were interns together. Then after intern year, our ways parted a little bit, but we were in the hospital together. We were on call together. We didn't really operate together, but we did all of that together.
Were you guys in the same hospital?
We were in the same hospitals.
Wow.
It was we were at NYU, so it's a huge system, so we were often not in the same building, but we could be, and they're all along one strip of First Avenue in Manhattan, and so we could pass each other on the street. But yes, we were in it together.
That worked out unbelievably, huh?
Yeah, it was tricky, and there was a period of time, 2 years, where we didn't live together, and we had the 2 boys at that time because I had to move on to DC to continue my training, and he was still training in New York. So there were some challenges to it, definitely, but it was an experience like no other that we got for each other and that we could really support each other through that, because it's such, again, a unique experience that it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Well, yeah, it's not often you hear of, people getting together, coming up in the same system and almost working hand in hand, knowing the same kind of stuff as far as, career-wise. But that's amazing. And you could tell just by listening to the stories that, you guys are almost made for each other. Like the word power couple comes to mind because Steve doesn't know your husband, but I know him not very well, but I know enough to know, the type of person he is. And it's just funny. You don't hear that as often. Too many times people, either get together for the wrong reasons or it doesn't work out. And then unfortunately, sometimes, children are affected by that. So kudos to you guys for sticking on the right path.
Oh, thank you.
So what else can we discuss with this young lady,
There's
Steve?
so many places to go because there's so many places to pick your brain. I mean, we had our wives on, and
Yes.
we're a team, him and I here, but our real teams are our families. Obviously, you said that earlier. The most important thing in your life is your family, and I can tell you cherish your upbringing, and I'm sure you're even though that was the highlight of your life growing up, now the highlight of your life is your family. What are you guys doing to make sure that you spend as much time together as you can? Are you obviously having 2 career, parents?
Sure.
Are you making sure that dinner is a priority? And what are you guys doing to facilitate, family time and making that important?
Yeah. So I counter us so grateful at this point that we can be there for the majority of the little moments, especially when it wasn't that long ago when being at a basketball game on Saturday was something that I couldn't count on, or honestly, just being at a parent-teacher conference wasn't something that I could count on because perhaps there was an emergency surgery that I had to go to, or perhaps I just had clinic and I couldn't get the time off because I wasn't in charge of my schedule. And so honestly, it's the simple things. We are in a season of life right now where we are here, there, and everywhere. And honestly, most days, especially most weekend days, don't look the same. No two look alike because of our traveling, but it's just really prioritizing the togetherness. So sometimes on a Saturday morning, we are in the car on the way to a basketball tournament, but sometimes we're all in the kitchen and we're making protein pancakes. But whatever it is, I think it's always that we're just trying to make whatever that experience is quality. And we're always asking each other, what was your best moment of the day? What was your worst moment of the day? And when it comes to that worst moment of the day, we're trying to learn from that worst moment, like sort of like what we talked about earlier. But I have to say, in all honesty, it just really looks different every single day.
You mentioned the word quality, and that's huge because, you guys can all be under the same roof and, really not conversate at all.
Sure.
And you sound like you're doing that great. It's super important to me I have little ones, still on the young side compared to yours and Steve's, but I just always keep the mindset of making sure that the time is spent with them, and if you want it to be quality, sometimes not their kids and everything, sure. but you hit the nail on the head there. And I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with nowadays, being so busy. Realizing that family quality time is huge.
Yes.
And you kind of alluded to the fact sometimes no 2 days are the same,
right.
But the most important part is that you're doing everything together and you're staying busy. Yeah. One thing I always think about is make sure I keep my kids busy so they don't get into trouble.
Sure.
Because my mom always told me that you're going to get into trouble if you have nothing to do.
Sure.
So is there ever a dull moment where you're trying to come up with ideas, or are they just so engulfed in sports and other stuff?
I have to say mostly not. We've had, especially recently, some tough weather days, and at the end of it, those days fly by. But at the beginning of the day, I do have that moment oh my goodness, what are we going to do today? Yeah. We're not going to leave the house. And those days are great too, because we don't have them very often. So then we can pull out the puzzles and pull out the board games, and we can read books together, and we can just be silly. So those days are rare, I have to say. Again, those days are pretty rare right now, but we just try to make the most of it. And I think we really enjoy each other. We're a family that likes to have fun. We all have a good sense of humor. No one is too precious in our family. No one.
Not even the little princess.
Yep. Nope. Not even her. Everyone has to be able to take a joke, and so we just like to have fun.
Yeah, Steve's in your boat too.
Yeah,
with the little princess.
We have a lot in common. I'm listening to you. I'm like, this is crazy. I always my youngest is a daughter with two older brothers, so I can imagine how she is. I'm sure she's tough.
Oh, she is.
And we have a life that has a lot going on, and sometimes I have to tell myself to embrace those slow days.
Sure.
It's okay to be lazy, sit on the couch. And that's why I like winter sometimes, because sometimes we're not as active.
That's right.
It's just embrace this time together where we're doing nothing. I'm not at work. They're not at school.
Yes.
And, early on in the pandemic, it kind of gave us that close and alone time and not a lot of noise.
Sure.
And we also do what's your worst and what was the worst and best part of the day.
Love that.
So that is very interesting, to say the least. I can tell, you have a lot going on, but I can tell you prioritize family just I think is important. Kids at events, I always notice they're always looking out into the crowd and looking for us because they want our support. Mm-hmm. So I think it's pivotal when you're a parent to try to be there as much as you can.
Totally.
That's the one thing I try to do. And when you're busy and you've got a lot of things going on, you have to, try your best to make sure you're always remembering this is a priority.
Yeah.
I have a vacation coming up. I'm not like my co-host here who goes on vacation all the time.
This might be the first one Steve has taken since we started the podcast.
As someone that, owns their own business too, and I don't have, other people that can just take over when I leave.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do.
It is.
And I just say, I have to prioritize this.
Yeah.
Money's important, all my clients are important, but my family's of utmost importance. Are you ever finding yourself trying to, figure out what to do? Do you go with a gut? Is there, what helps you do that? Writing it down, planning it, picking something from a hat.
Yes.
To
take time away.
Yeah. To make sure you're like enjoying yourself and doing stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that's such a good question. And something that just came up, honestly, because our children, our daughters in preschool, they have spring break in the middle of March, and it's 2 solid weeks. And we need to go away. And it's funny because of all of the things that you just mentioned, it's almost time, right? And we haven't planned anything yet, but we are going away. And it's been a while for so many reasons, right? So many reasons that we all understand. It's been a while since we've been away as a family, but it's also so needed. And it's been a very hectic, but also frigid winter so far. And so we're really looking forward to it. I think, again, for me, coming from outside of just outright vacations, I really do. I value vacation. I value that time away. I value exploring. I value adventure. And I value fun. I probably said that a few times. So I really like to go on vacation. For me, they're just having those even shorter chunks of time, again, like a weekend. I still really relish that because I used to not get a weekend. It used to be that 2 of my 4 weekends of a month belonged to the hospital. And so now that all of the weekends are mine, that still really means a lot. And I don't take that for granted. But just going on vacation. And for me, I think what leads that is that the children have a break. So I want them to get the most out of that break. If they didn't, I could probably allow myself to work, but I don't want them to have had 2 weeks off from school and go back to school not having had the most from that break. So that's probably the biggest reason that we go on vacation.
Do you guys have it planned out? Is it someplace nice and sunny and warm?
No, it's not planned out. So we always overpay. But it will be sunny and warm. It's funny. Probably our happy place is in Stowe, Vermont, but we were too slow. So we're not going to Stowe because it's all booked up. Oh, yeah. But that's okay because then that means that we're going to go somewhere warm.
Do you guys ski, snowboard, or do you just like going there for other reasons?
We ski. Okay. The boys are definitely the best skiers. But again, with everything that's been happening, we haven't been in a year. So we were hoping to get some spring skiing in, but I don't think we're going to. But we love going to Stowe for all of that it has to offer, but we love to hit the slopes too.
Yeah, I love doing that too.
It's probably the only thing I enjoy doing in the snow.
Yeah, it makes it so much fun. No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Just being at the top of the mountain and taking it all in for a second.
The time you enjoy being cold.
Yeah.
Yes. Social media. We touch on this with a lot of our guests, especially the ones that have children coming up where it's scary for them. Yeah. I've seen your work on social media a little bit. Very well done.
Well, thank you.
We need some help, we'll pay you. Kidding. But more importantly, as adults, I'm sure we can navigate it more and control it better. Mm-hmm. Having kids, I think, especially kids in your kids' age range right now, it's going to become a thing. Yes. It's probably scary for you, I'm sure, as it will be for me and Steve. Mm-hmm. Do they have cell phones? How do you limit the screen time? Like, are they getting the tablets in school? Do they even have a Facebook account right now? Yes. What's going on in that part of your life?
Yeah, so my boys both have phones. It's very interesting. So my oldest is 12, as I mentioned, and he turned 10 just before the pandemic struck, as we say. And in that year, what we had talked about as a family, that would be his first year to go to sleepaway camp. And so in preparation for that, we would have some stepwise events away from home, away from mom and dad, and that he needed to have a cell phone for that reason. So then there was a pandemic. So he did not go away, but yeah, he had a phone. So what that did for our family was set a precedent so that when my second child turned 10, he had an expectation for a phone. So though the phones don't really go anywhere, they both have phones. And they now, I think a little bit because of basketball culture, they both have Instagram accounts. Facebook is not what the kids are doing.
No, it's so last week.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
That makes sense because I still have Facebook. I mean, I don't know how to use it, as Nicole attests to, but wow. I'm not getting a lot of good news tonight.
Oh, man.
So they have very limited access to it. We have their phones. Their phones stay in communal family areas. They have limited times that they can be on Instagram. It's really on the weekend. And the deal is that they have to create more than they consume. Because if you've seen me on Instagram, I actually think it's fun. I like the content creation part of it. It's a little way to, again, have some fun, express some creativity. And that's the side of it that we stress with them, especially, we're a music-loving family, can bring that into it and just have a little fun with it. So that's what we really talk about. But so when it comes to the creation, we want them to utilize those things and not just be sucking in everything that other people are making. So they have to create something as much as they are consuming something, and it's very limited.
That is genius.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy because if you think about it, it's like, yeah, you can have a phone and go on social media, but it's almost like I think of it like you have to do your homework first. You have to do the work.
Yes.
So yes, creating, it's teaching them everything.
Yeah.
It's teaching them how to use technology. And it's teaching them that they can't just sit there and watch other people's stuff. It's genius.
I'm so at odds with, what you just said opened up a whole different perspective to me. And it just came to me, which is, well, I'm going to share it because I think it's enlightening. And I don't come up with too many things that are enlightening too often. But I've been on this school of thought where like, I'm going to wait. I told my kids the other day in the car, ironically, you're going to be the last kids in your school to get it. So you just better bear and grin and deal with it. I don't care if, I wait, until you're in high school or college or all talk.
Sure.
And then as you're talking about this, I'm like, oh, this is a different perspective. And then it opened up my perspective where I thought about my own life. So alcohol. So we're Portuguese, and the culture for alcohol is not that big of a deal.
Sure.
And I remember being 12 years old and my grandfather saying, you want a sip of beer? Yeah. And in normal circumstances, my mother and father would be like, what are you, nuts? But no one talked to my grandfather. Right. So if my grandfather, so that exposure early on and then growing up, and I think you'll notice the difference somewhat. Not that Europeans don't have problems with alcohol because they do. I'm not naive, but it was never that big of a deal to me. So, it's another way of approaching it, right? Yeah. Here it is. They're going to have it eventually. Right. And do you want it to be oh my gosh, and then they go off the deep end, or little by little exposing them to it? So I'm shifting the way I'm starting to think about social media just from today and phones and all that. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, of course. And again, not that I have it all right, not that we have it all right, but I think, they're not utilizing social media when they're sequestered in their rooms and it's this secretive thing. It's actually almost a family event where we're talking about how could you get more people to notice this? What if you added music? What if you put an emoji there? What could you do with that font? How can we change it? How can we make that pop out? So it's a little bit of something that we get to do together. And especially my oldest is actually really interested in software. And so we try to really emphasize that side of it because it is part of their world, as we were kind of talking about.
You're right. You can take anything and have it be a learning experience and hand it to a child, an open mind, and have them, learn from it. Right. It's amazing. Do they have the latest and greatest iPhone with the best camera and everything?
Do not.
No, it's a flip phone.
No, I actually don't even know which one they have. But no,
it's not important, right?
It is not important. No.
That's
no. the mindset and parenting and trying to teach our kids through these issues. It's one of my concerns with all this technology is, and we alluded to this earlier, I think before we were technically on camera, your kids had a game and it took forever to download.
Yes.
And it's like the patience that we have in our generation if you got on the internet, it took 10, 15 minutes where everything, you can go on the internet while you're driving, which is the fact that I'm calling it the internet.
No.
I don't even, do they call it that? But you wonder how you're going to, facilitate, patience and being able to just sit in a room and meditate. But it's like anything else. It takes practice.
Yes.
And obviously we've confronted challenges in our lives and we've gotten through them. And here we are trying to help people get through their challenges, and, no better place than start at home and helping our kids get, facing and meeting these things. And I love that you're giving them tips on how and encouraging them to look at things differently. And it helped me open up my eyes to looking at things differently. So this is exactly why we're doing this. It's you get caught in these, these mindsets of, no, here's what I'm going to do. And this is the right thing. And then you hear it said differently and you're like, okay, well, maybe there is another way of doing this. So I think that's why these conversations are so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's another opportunity to learn, right? I think it's really important to have that open communication with people, and it's just the art of conversation, right? It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's so almost cliche in a way, because it's like the day and age where everyone is just in their phones staring at, something that's not alive, not talking to a person next to them.
Right.
One of the things I try to remind myself every day when I wake up is like, what are the things I love to do? What do I need? What steps do I need to do today to continue to do them? And it's all about, with me, a big thing is consistency. I like being active. I like being fit. I have young kids now. I want to be there for them as much as possible. Yeah. So even on the worst days when I wake up in a bad mood, or, the Monday blues and stuff like that, I've found a way to keep going, putting one foot in step of the other. Are there any little things that, your inner mind are telling you on a daily basis that that keep you going in a successful way that we've just learned?
Yes. Yeah. Again, I think I really keep it positive. And so, that is not to say that I don't feel negative emotions, because I'm human. We get to feel a whole range of emotions. But if something triggers me and puts me in a negative space, regardless of where it's coming from, I like to keep it out of my circle. So I sort of tease my husband that I've got a happy little bubble around me. And it's not to say that I don't know that there's badness in the world. I do. But I don't need it sent to me in a meme, and I don't need it texted to me, and I don't need to watch the video. And so I really protect my energy in that way. And I think that's probably what I say to myself most, is protect your energy, protect your energy. There's so much energy that's being spent in so many places with all of the things that we've talked about so far. And I need to protect my energy so I can utilize it in the best possible way. So I think I'm like She-Ra, warding off the badness so that I can keep doing that.
What are the little things? One thing about me, I like to get into almost details with people so I can learn as much as possible.
Sure.
What are there any little words you're saying to yourself if you're really feeling stressed on something and it's almost consuming you? Mm-hmm. How do you redirect and focus where your mind, your mind's supposed to be?
Yeah. So if it's something negative, like bad news, or as the world turns and new events creep up, I'll say to myself, protect your energy. If I'm almost getting myself into a worry spiral, and especially, with creating a new business, there's every single day, there's something new, there's a new problem to solve. That's what I'll often do. So it'll start off as a worry, what if? And then I'll say, no, this is a problem to solve. So what can I do right now to solve this problem? And just take it with what's right in front of me and try not to get too many steps down the road, because we don't know what's there. We just know what's right here. And I think I try to create forward motion such that I'm always thinking about what I can do as opposed to what the problem is, what's out there in the world. I try to refocus on what I can do.
It's almost like, what rings true with me is like, try not to creep into that victim mentality.
Sure.
Like you're here for a reason. Everything you do, essentially, I always say, I'm hard on myself. I say it in a bad way. Like anything I do is my fault. And, another famous, we talked about books a lot, and another famous person in the world right now is Jocko. And he's like, if you're going to be a leader, you have to be responsible for everything. And it's not that you're like being hard on yourself, but it's just recognizing that you're in control of everything.
Sure.
And it's sad to just think a lot of people don't realize that. They think a lot of things are out of their control and they can't do anything to fix it.
Yeah, agreed. And I think with that said, as a leader, you're an example. So not that you can't have a bad moment, not that you can't have a negative feeling, but then what do you do about it? Do you stay there or do you take charge of it? Do you, allow yourself to give in to that bad feeling, to that fear, to that worry? Or do you, again, get proactive and get active about it? So I think, again, it's a mindset shift about what are you in control of?
Yeah. Instead of focusing on things you can't control, focus on what you can control. And it always falls back to mindset.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Staying positive and like I like what you said, moving forward, keep going,
Yeah.
keep taking steps. It's all the same thing. It's like stay on your path. You know what you need to do.
That's right.
And there's hurdles, jump over them. Problems, learn from them. Don't repeat mistakes.
That's right.
And just always on the right path. Sometimes you can get off of it, but you kind of know where you're going. I feel when you know the direction you're moving in and you have a strong foundation, which you do, a lot of what you've said today is kind of scary how close of a mindset we have, because, I have my foundation and my pillars and what I find to be important. I mean, I love my career. I love the flexibility of having my own business and what it does for me and my family, because to me, that's my priority. And sometimes we get lost. Sure. We emphasize too much on work, or we get lost from what is truly important. So I think we have to follow tips and do what we need to do to make sure that we can refocus on what's important. Sometimes I get in ruts where I'm worried about stuff that is out of my control.
Yes.
And the fantasy of what could go wrong is always worse than what actually goes wrong.
Sure.
It's like, why am I wasting my time thinking about all the different ways I'm not going to, get work or have clients? Focus on what I'm doing and do it the best I can, and things will happen. Yeah. I so appreciate the time you spent with us today. I don't want to take up too much of your time. No worries. You start talking and we could be here all day long. I always look at the clock. I'm like, wow, we've been here longer than we should have you here, but I appreciate everything that you've said. I don't want to steal my co-host thunder, because it's kind of his stick now, asking our guests the same question.
Well, we're switching tunes a little bit. I go on vacation. I do the conclusion.
I get the luxury.
You can take it away for once. It's okay.
Well, if he's going to give me the honor, I will.
know. It was so generous.
Yeah, I'm going to take if he's giving me the honor, I got to take. But we talked about that earlier. Take what's given to you sometimes, right? So what is the good life to you? What do you think is the good life?
Yeah. I think the good life is a life full of love. I think it's when you wake up and you're excited for whatever you get to experience in that day. And hopefully it's something that again is full of love, is full of fun, is full of a little bit of adventure. And so I'm so excited to say that I'm living the good life right now.
Thank you.
Well, we're psyched to hear that. It was amazing having you. I'm so glad. Listen, I love Damani and everything, but I'm so glad he offered to have you come on and share with the audience.
Thank you. I am too.
Yeah. So you'll have to come back sometime.
For sure.
We definitely would love to have you.
Invite me. And again, the
We're,
invitation.
we're going to do a live. We're definitely going to do
It's
that.
definitely going to happen. It's
That
definitely
I
going to happen. Where can, just remind everyone the name of your practice. Where can people find you? Anything you want to say to sign off?
Sure. So our practice is Modern Vascular. It's in Ridgefield, Connecticut. You can see us on Instagram at Modern Vascular CT. And then I'm at Dr. Brittny MD on Instagram.
Yes, and we will certainly have all that in the description. We'll push it. Instagram, not Facebook anymore. I guess no one's on Facebook anymore. But Instagram, at least so your kids can see it.
That's right.
Thanks again for coming.
Of
We really
course.
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming into the BOA Life and giving us tips. And
sure.
thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, comment, and help us improve so that we can improve your lives.
Bye, everybody.